got Thomas Lanahan here today from
Courtney.
who works with YouthBuild USA a lot with our 401k and all that kind of good stuff. So he's gonna give us some information on managing debt and investing. So I'll pass it over to you, Thomas.
All right, great. Okay. All right. So I just want to kind of get into just some basics on debt. And, you know, it's something that's a tough topic because between rent, car payments, other debt you might have, it can be tough to get under control. But just on a broad basis, you know, we look at debt and there's really two types of debt that we consider. And some debt is actually not really a bad debt. That would be something like, you know, if you were to put a down payment on a home or to purchase a car to get back and forth to work, we don't consider that bad debt, right? So that would be considered good debt. Bad debt would be credit cards, which a lot of people have, and that's really where you want to stay away from that if possible. So if you do have credit card debt, you know, we recommend you try and pay that off as quickly as possible. I know it's hard because obviously you have to pay your rent, your car payment, you've got to eat. But the bad debt, the high interest rate debt, that's really what can hinder your savings over time because you're paying so much in interest. So you want to stay away from bad debt. The way to do that is, if you can, use your debit card from your bank to pay for most of your purchases, because at least with your debit card, you know, you're not accruing debt. When you get in trouble is when you let those credit card balances get sky high. So that's the piece on debt. And what we find is if you can limit yourself to one credit card, that usually helps. You know, it's when you get into trouble, when you're using 2 or 3 different credit cards at the same time, that's when debt can kind of get away from you. So, you know, as far as the credit card goes, and I'm sure you know this, you know, the key on those, if you do have credit card debt, is to pay those balances off, at least the minimum payment, at least every month. You don't want to get behind on that. That'll hurt your credit score. So the strategies for paying off credit card debt would be what we call either the snowball or the avalanche method. And the snowball would be just, okay, let's pay off the credit card with the lowest balance first. Can at least you feel like you're getting somewhere. The avalanche method would be to say, okay, let me pay off the credit card with the highest interest rate. It doesn't really matter which one you choose. It's just a matter of, okay, maybe I go out to eat less this month, or maybe I bring my lunch to work. Maybe I'm doing all these things already, but trying to find some extra money to pay off your credit card debt is really the paramount piece here. And I guess more to the point is to take a budget and say, okay, how much am I bringing home a week from my job as a program coordinator? You know, what do I have to pay in rent? What is my car payment? What do I really have left over after I pay for the minimum expenses I need just to live? And then trying not to spend over that. If you haven't done it already, you can go on to Experian or TransUnion or Equifax and get a free credit report. I highly recommend you do that. There's a lot of credit card fraud going on out there, and it's just a good idea to check in once a year to make sure someone else is not using your social or your name. It happens more than you might think. So you can go to any of these 3 websites, they're the credit bureaus, and request a free credit report. I highly recommend you do that. And then you can find out what your credit score is, and hopefully, you know, there's nothing on there that you didn't create. So as far as debt, that's kind of really what I had on the debt piece. If you don't own a home, that's probably the biggest debt that you'll have in your life is a mortgage. And at some point, you know, you'll want to find a home, hopefully, that you can afford. And that monthly payment is something within, you know, what your income is at YouthBuild. I'm going to get into the investment piece on the, let me get to that screen. All right. Sorry, just gonna get there. All right. Go back to investing. Okay, sorry. I'm trying to get over to the other screen. All right. Got it. Okay. Okay, can everybody see that now? The investing screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So, Courtney, as far as investing goes, and that's really the other piece of managing your money, is clearly paying off your debt, but also if you do have savings, you know, what kind of rates of return you're going to get. Not to get too personal, but do you have any type of IRA or savings account that you set up for retirement?
I do have a retirement fund through work, but it's really hard for me to save right now. Like have a savings.
I hear that from a lot of people. So the plan you have through work, is that a payroll deduct type program where you could put in on a weekly basis?
Yeah.
Okay. And is that a 401k or a 403b? It doesn't really matter. I'm just curious.
I believe it's a 403b.
Okay. You don't know do you know who the fund manager is, who the company is that runs it?
No.
Do you know if there's any kind of match?
Yes. So yeah, we if you sign up for it, you can choose the amount that you want.
Okay. Are you doing?
Out, and then our job puts in, they match or half of it, I believe.
Okay. So are you saving? Are you putting anything into the plan now?
Yes.
Okay, good. So you're putting in at least the amount that you get matched on?
Yes.
All right. Well, that's good. So I always tell people, you know, especially when you're in your 20s and 30s, you know, whatever you can afford to save is the appropriate amount. There's really no magic answer on that. But if you're saving, you know, 4, 5, 6% and getting a match, you know, it doesn't seem like a lot maybe on a weekly basis, but over time, you know, hopefully that will grow. And you get to be in your 50s and 60s, that's when the money really starts to grow, hopefully like a snowball going downhill. There's a rule, something called the rule of 72s, which would help you. So whatever your account balance is, and I don't need to know, but let's say your account balance was $5,000 today, right? If you averaged a 7% rate of return, the rule of 72s says 7 goes into 72 about 10 times. So your money is going to double every 10 years. It's just a good rule of thumb because, again, as you're getting started out and your balance is $5,000, $7,000, it just doesn't seem like a lot of money. Like, where is this ever going to go, right? But once you get to be 40, 45 years of age, and maybe you've got $100,000 saved, and it seems like that's going to take forever to get there, right? But if you think about the rule of 72s and your money doubles every 10 years, if by the time you're age 40, you've got $100,000 or even $50,000 saved, now is when you can really start to see some growth, because every 10 years, your money's going to double. And that doesn't include what you're contributing. So if I've got $50,000 or $100,000 at age 40, at age 50, it's going to be hopefully $200,000. And at age 60, it's going to be $400,000. So that's where you really make up some ground, is when your balance gets to $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, and that money is doubling every 10 years, plus what you're contributing is going in. You'll be surprised in your last 10 to 15 years of work, you could basically double what you have saved. So hopefully that gives you some hope as to, all right, why am I doing this, right? 5, 6% of my pay doesn't seem like a lot of money, but remember, through compound interest, hopefully it will grow. So in terms of investing, people try and make this out to be more complicated than it really is. Think about something you own, your cell phone. I don't know if you have a Netflix subscription. All these companies, they're trying to do one thing, which is to make money for their shareholders. So people try and make the stock market and investing out to be this really complicated thing. It's not, okay? So if I own Apple Computer stock, the way that that stock is going to go up in value is if Apple Computer continues to make new products and make money. It's that simple, right? If Netflix continues to get new subscribers, they're going to make more money and their stock price is going to go up. So when you pick your investments for your 403b and you look at what the funds are investing in, which you probably don't because most people don't, but if you just look at your investments today and, you know, call me next week if you want, email me, I can go through it with you. You can see what the investments you're in are buying. You can see what companies they invest in. I think it's kind of cool. So let's say you're in a growth fund in your 403b. You can let me know what fund you're in, and I can send you a report this afternoon that shows you what companies that fund is buying. So maybe there's a company you don't like. Maybe you don't like oil companies, and you say, look, I don't want to be in this fund. You know, it's buying Exxon and Chevron. So you can really get a pretty fine gauge of what is in those mutual funds from two things, from whether I like those companies or, hey, this is really cool. You know, they're investing in Netflix and Apple and Microsoft. So you can get an idea of what the fund manager for your investments is trying to do. So I'll just give you my email address. It's T Lanahan, Lanahan at 401kquote.com. And if you think about it and you want to just grab your statement from your 403b and just email that to me, I'll do a complete analysis for you of how you're invested and hopefully you're fine. But if you're not, I can make some recommendations on how to better allocate your retirement savings, okay?
Okay.
So, you know, this is a little bit in the weeds. Most people don't get this kind of narrow, but if you wanted to focus in on, you know, companies that were not harming the environment, companies that were maybe focused on, you know, consumers, you could get that fine tuned in your investments. Most people don't. Most people just say, look, I want to be in a fund that's going to return 8 to 10% over the next 30 years. That's kind of what I hear from most people. So that's something we can help you do. So you're already investing, which is good. I think the key for you is to maybe get an idea of how your investments are working. So this gives you an idea of something that's called the Dow. You'll hear people talk all the time about the market's up, the market's down. So the Dow average is really just large, what they call blue chip stocks: Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Johnson & Johnson, Microsoft, Bank of America, all big companies that you've heard of that are not, you know, they're not Tesla, right? They're going to invest in, they're going to be companies that have been around for a long time, and they're not, you know, at the forefront of, you know, necessarily new technology. They're more the staid, kind of old style companies, General Motors, that have been around for a long, long time. The new companies that people kind of getting all enraged about are the Facebooks, the Googles, the Amazons, sort of like, okay, we're at the next phase of, you know, where are we going to be over the next 10 years? So 10 years from now, these companies might be the old face. I don't know where technology is going to go. So you just want to maybe spend some time over the next couple of weeks and try to figure out, okay, how old am I? You know, when might I retire? When I retire, what am I going to live off of? Most people are going to live primarily off of Social Security. For most people, Social Security is going to be the biggest part of your retirement income. Maybe you'll work part-time in retirement. And again, I know at your age, these are things you probably don't want to think about. So I wouldn't, you know, spend more than a half hour on it, but just give it some thought. And then say to yourself, okay, if I'm going to retire at 67 years of age and I need, you know, $300,000 saved, how today can I work backwards to try and get to that number? So this gives you an idea of what types of investments you can invest in. And if you send me your statement, I can tell you how you're invested right now. So there's small company stocks, there's large company stocks, there's government bonds, there's bills, treasury bills. What you need to really focus in on is that inflation runs around 3% a year. So if I'm only earning 3.3, I'm barely outpacing inflation. So that's why it's going to be important for me to look and see where you're invested. We really haven't talked much about inflation over the last several years, but inflation is now coming back into things. You'll find that people are saying, wait a minute, the price of gas is going up. The price of milk is rising. Rent is rising. So inflation is something that people don't really talk much about, but they are now. It's starting to come back into things. So you want to make sure your investments are at least outpacing inflation. You want to diversify, right? So you don't want to have all your money in technology funds or large company stock funds. You want to have a little bit in all different types of asset classes because you don't know what's going to do well from year to year. It's going to change. So right now, we are in a bull market because the market is rising. Expect a little bit of choppiness here the rest of the year, as interest rates will probably rise and the whole euphoria of the pandemic ending kind of comes down a little bit. You're going to see the market kind of zigzag around a bit. So what you want to think about is that anything that happens this year or next year is sort of irrelevant to your long-term savings. Don't lose track of the sight that you're probably 25, 30 years away from retiring. So there's no reason to worry about if we have another drop in the market of 40%. It doesn't matter. The only day that matters what your account is worth is the day that you sell, right? So if my account was worth $10,000 yesterday and it's worth $5,000 tomorrow, did I lose $5,000? No, you didn't, unless you sell your account. So don't get worried about, short-term events in the news. There's always going to be somebody predicting the end of the world. But I'm 55 and I've seen a lot go on in the last 35 years. It always seems to rebound. If you go back to last March, the end of the world was upon us. The market was dropping 60%. How are we going to beat this thing? People, the world are fairly resilient. So I wouldn't lose track of that, and don't get caught up in the short-term negativity of the news.